Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. My name is Gyro, and today we are reviewing another build, quite a good, very cool build in Path of Exile 3.17 Siege of the Atlas League. And this is a Phantasm based summoner. There are lots of different names to this, and the original build this experiment is based on, is from my man Navandis from Navandis Gaming. Please check out the link to the original guide in the description of this video. So if this is the very first time you're tuning in into this particular series, this is not a full-blown build guide from me, because someone has already done a much better job than I can do with my resources, time, etc., and the amount of interest I have in one particular build to take it to the absolute very end game. I am basically trying the build and sharing my impressions of, can you make it work cheaply? Can you make it work really easily without stressing too much, with buying maybe bare minimum of items and still having fun? So that is the angle of this video, and similar build reviews from me. If this is your cup of tea, now is your chance to tell YouTube that it should show it to more people. So like the video please, and subscribe for more similar videos from me. Now, you need a couple of items to make sure that those phantasms are summoned quite reliably. And then you summon the phantasms, that's your bread and butter damage dealer here. And then you boost those phantasms with offerings. A couple of items that are mandatory. Well, mandatory item is probably only one item. It's the Soul Rest Ezomite staff. You can get it, you can either be super lucky to find it, but most likely, and the best option here, is to just go on the community market, pathofexile.com/trade, and buy this Soul Rest stuff. I think I bought it for something rather cheap. It was definitely under 10 Chaos Orbs, but I think it was even cheaper than that. It's just I buy a lot of stuff and take a look at a lot of builds, so right now I honestly cannot remember. All I know is that it was relatively cheap, like 5-10 Chaos Orbs max. This stuff is mandatory. As Navandis talks in his guide, and I will highlight for you here, my friends, especially beginners, the links in the stuff don't have to be linked. That is the most important thing. This is usually what costs the most, to buy an item, any item, with lots of sockets that are linked. In this case, you do need sockets for support gems to plug into it, but at the same time, they don't have to be linked. That's a very, very important thing here. So, what does the stuff do? Well, it triggers the Summon Phantasm skill when you consume a corpse. So we need to generate corpses. How do we generate them? Well, Navandis, and I learned it from him, and I think it's a great method. Navandis basically uses Cyclone skill, which I have a Sharknado microtransaction attached to, which I still absolutely love, by the way. So this is where those awesome sharks are from, my friends. So I spin to win, essentially using Cyclone skill here, and Cyclone skill here is linked to cast while channeling support, and cast when channeling support is linked to Desecrate in its turn. Yeah, Bone Offering is also linked to this in order to, desecrate the ground to create corpses essentially, and then Bone Offering is consuming the corpse, boosting the power of the minions. It grants minions a chance to attack spell damage, block attack damage, block spell damage, and grants minions a regeneration. So technically speaking, it's not boosting the damaging power of the minions, but it is giving them higher levels of survivability. You can also change it to a different offering, Flesh Offering, if I'm not mistaken, another skill there, which will be, if again I'm not mistaken, because I'm not an expert in offerings, but I think Bone Offering is boosting the protection of the minions, and Flesh Offering I think is boosting the damage. So Soul Rest stuff will summon your phantasms and giving you a massive spell increase damage, and minions gain additional damage. It's just fantastic, and you regenerate life per second. Soul Rest stuff is just such a great thing, which is why it's mandatory for this build. All phantasms summoned by you by this stuff will gain automatically benefit from these support gems, even without having them linked, which is amazing, isn't it? So we are giving them extra ability to spray a bit more. Phantasms, they are shooting those they're spitting those little spell thingos, whatever. I wanted to call them arrows, but they obviously are not. So we're giving them lesser multiple projectile support. We giving them multi-strike support so that melee attack skills repeat twice. we give them hypothermia support so that they also inflict a bit of cold damage over time, etc. And we put another summoned phantasm support into here just to make sure that we have more phantasms summoned. So we get automatically phantasms summoned by the staff. And then we also summon phantasms here. Yep, so this is an overlapping effect, don't get confused by this. And cold penetration support is just great because we are already doing hypothermia. Another item that is, I don't think, as mandatory as Soul Rest staff, obviously, in this build, but it is highly, highly, highly recommended. It's the Devouring Diadem. So what's great about the Devouring Diadem is that it boosts the level of the socketed gems, which in my case are just defensive gems. That's cool, you might use them more smartly. It is also triggering Feast of Flesh every 5 seconds. Feast of Flesh is that skill that is, if I'm not terribly mistaken, it is consuming the corpse and it is boosting the damage of your minions. What I have used, and what is not part of Navandis's build, but that is me repurposing this piece from the Summon Raging Spirits build, I am using replica Bones of Ullr silk slippers here as well, which is optional, but it is pretty good because first of all, it's just very good stat-wise, I think, the very good boots stat-wise, but also, most importantly, it works for both Raging Spirits and Phantasms, which gives them a 10% chance to refresh their duration if they hit a boss. It essentially means that if you are somehow, you know, not in the mode of spinning and you want to be running around instead and dodging dangerous boss mechanics, your Phantasms are not going to expire very likely, or at least they will last a lot longer, and they will continue hammering the boss, even if all you do is just run around and use Flame Dash and whatever else you use to avoid dangerous mechanics. That's it. Now, as far as the final mention of the minion support here, I'm running a couple of Spectres, which again are not optimized, but the idea is to get silverbacks from riverways, those apes, and those apes will put frenzy charges onto your phantasms. So that is also something that works for me quite well here. Now, this is the overview of the build. I relied on the previously obtained Fortress Covenant jewel here, so that is probably the biggest difference from Navandis's build as far as the skill tree is concerned. Fortress Covenant is an expensive jewel. I got it for free. It just dropped for me, but I think it's something like 40 to 50 chaos orbs, so I cannot solely recommend it. I cannot say that you absolutely need it, but why not? I actually can recommend it. I just will not say that it's mandatory because it pushes the build into more expensive category, so you can live without it. But as you can see, if you are not taking any other notables in this circle, you are avoiding the negative effect of minions taking 20% of increased damage, and instead they gain only the positives. They only get increased damage, quite massively increased damage by 44%, a lot, and quite substantial, nothing to sneeze at, chances to block attack damage and spell damage. This makes your minions much sturdier and much stronger. Other than that, again, just refer to the POB from Navandis. That's what I did. I think, again, with the minor deviations from me here, where I went, for example, for Diamond Skin to add to my elemental resistances. I'm not entirely sure that Navandis did that, but I did that. There are still more nodes to be taken. For example, this Wheel of Life has not been all taken yet to boost my life pool. And life pool is okay-ish, I suppose, considering that I'm relying on my mid shields and on my phantasms to take the brunt of the damage. 3.5 thousand of life, I think it's pretty decent, considering that we also have the bone armor effect from our ascendancy. Yeah, the one that also will absorb quite a lot of damage before the damage actually hits the life pool. So it is a I would dare say relatively tanky build, even though in my current unoptimized state, really casual, really kind of just how I play, not even all of my elemental resistances are capped, as you can see. I get immunity to a lot of ailments, but physical damage reduction is quite meek. So I probably need to work a little bit more on the mana reservation, you know, of auras, and hopefully weave in an extra aura other than Purity of Elements and Zealotry that I'm running right now. So that's definitely not optimized, but that's something for you to consider if this is your cup of tea. What, again, jumping back to what I like about this, well, first of all, the build is unusual. I quite like that the build is quite unusual, and that is a positive. yeah, we have to entertain ourselves. Ultimately, that's what these builds are for. They're not our jobs. They're there to make sure that we enjoy what we do and at the same time experience something different. It's a game, you know, it's not supposed to be stale. And that's why I roll a lot of characters. That's why I do a lot of these reviews and guides and stuff. So I think that for a summoner, again, it's a fairly unusual build, at least in my book. I quite like how phantasms work. I like swarms. I don't like few minions. I don't. That's why I didn't like Reaper, for example, summon Reaper build where you run with the you run with a few summoned minions, but most of them are just there to feed your Reaper as opposed to do the most damage. Yeah. But I like when there is a swarm of my phantasms or raging spirits or something like this floating around and killing everything. What I don't like, I kinda don't like the fact that as awesome as Soul Rest staff is, we already talked about this as a mandatory piece of this, as awesome as Devouring Diadem is, as awesome as Replica Bones of Ulr is, you know, as far as the pieces, the unique pieces are concerned. Reliance on solid unique pieces, such as mostly Soul Rest stuff in this case, as the only mandatory unique in this build. Reliance on that, heavy reliance on that, automatically means to me, and tell me in the comments down below if it means the same to you, it means that it's not as good a potential league starter as something a lot more basic would be, such as Summon Raging Spirits, because Summon Raging Spirits does not need any of that. Yes, it benefits from Replica Bones of Uller, for example, but those are optional. They are not mandatory. In this case, Soul Rest stuff is mandatory. It's a fun build. It's awesome mid-league. It's awesome even just a couple of weeks into the league when you can buy this stuff from the community market. But before that, you're kind of dead in the water. You cannot play this build particularly well. Well, at least I don't think you can. Let me know if you had different experience with this particular build, how far did you take it, and so on and so forth. I'm always interested to hear that from you, my friends. So, for what it's worth, these are my thoughts on this fun, definitely fun, especially because it gave me a chance to show off again my Sharknado Cyclone build. I enjoy playing it right now. As you can see, it's almost level 80 for me, which is high end by my humble casual standards. I usually switch to other builds much earlier than that, around level, I don't know, 72, 75 is like the tops for me typically, and this one is almost pushing 80. But can I recommend it? Absolutely. From about mid-league onwards, I can recommend it. Can I recommend it as a league starter? No, I cannot recommend it as a league starter. But if you have played lots of different summoner builds, and generally like for your minions to do your dirty work, it is absolutely something for you to try once you have Chaos Orbs, once you are comfortable with buying stuff from the community market. And if you are absolute beginner of Path of Exile and you're like, oh, that looks cool, but I have no idea what he's talking about buying stuff from the community market, please check out my channel, my friend. I have a very casual and beginner friendly guide on how to buy stuff from the community market, because that basically trade league, like basically playing trade versions where you trade for things, yeah, to make your builds work, that will open a completely new angle of the game for you that you may not have experienced before, and you've been missing out. Honestly, you have, my friend. And that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed this little review for what it's worth. Thanks again. Like the video if you haven't already, subscribe for more videos, and I'll talk to you next time.